Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of August 3rd, 2021. And this is officially episode number 486. And this is your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons. And we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com. And you can also find the official home of the Paranormal News Insider at ParaNewsInsider.com. And of course, you know, it's 2021, so we have social media outlets as well. Facebook and Twitter, pretty much that's all I have time for nowadays. This week, we've got stuff from all over the world, all over the place. A lot of stuff from every aspect of the paranormal, which is pretty cool. You don't always get that. It seems like one week we're heavy on one thing and light on the others. But tonight, it's pretty evenly distributed. So we are going to have some fun tonight. And I can't believe it's already August. I don't know what's happened. I've been kind of waiting around to do something for the summertime, but apparently I've run out of time. And one thing I forgot to do, which I sometimes do, I don't always do it, it's been kind of a pretty weak year, I would say, with the paranormal news. You know, granted, we're trying to get back to normal, whatever normal is anymore. But generally, I do a mid-season recap either at the end of June or beginning of July. Never really got around to that, but I think part of the reason was it's been a pretty weak year. Only a small handful of stories. Not the worst year I've ever seen, but definitely not one of the best. I mean, we do have a few big stories. Obviously, there's always one, one big one. Well, I should say not always. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 stories that are pretty decent that kind of fight over that top spot. But this year, I think the UAP report, that reveal, even though it wasn't the biggest news we were hoping for, I'd say that's probably one of your bigger stories. You might not remember the thylacine photos. Of course, that's not the first time that's happened. That was a pretty big story, worldwide story. What else? The UAP, the missile over New Mexico. We had the Oklahoma Sasquatch Quest thing where they were offering money to get Bigfoot. We had the Houston Tiger, that serval on the loose. Then we're kind of going downhill at this point. The Bigfoot river crossing photo and video. Cattle mutilations. I remember that story was a pretty big story here on the show. A lot of people liked that and commented on that. So, man, that looks like that might make the top 10. Yeah, it's pretty slim pickings once you get after the first few stories there. And that's generally how it is year to year, but you hope to have those big impactful stories or mass UFO sightings or, my hope is advancement in technology for something like ghost detection or something with consciousness. Those type of stories are ones that really interest me the most. We haven't had anything like that in a while. No major findings in the cryptid world. So it's kind of boring. You don't have those giant viral stories like the Area 51 raid from a couple of years ago. Nothing. I'd almost settle for something annoying like that story was a few years ago, just to have something to talk about. Now that the UAP thing is kind of smoldering a little bit in the corner. But we'll see. It's only the beginning of August. We got a long way to go. The cooler months are ahead of us. And we do have Halloween. And there's a little bit of debate going on right now with Halloween. A lot of people here are going full force, opening things up since they weren't allowed to last year. I know a lot of haunted house promoters in the area are saying, well, so far there's no restrictions, so we're going full throttle. And they're going to try to recoup some of their losses from last year. So we'll see how all the industry does. And if the industry does well, that tends to get people thinking about some of those crazier, zanier stories. We tend to see a little bit of an uptick in the fall normally as well. And usually you'll have, I don't know if it's just kind of weird. When I go back and look historically, there's almost like one big story a quarter. So every 3 months you got a pretty big story. So we'll see. We're kind of we're 2 months past the a month and a half past the UAP report. So we're due. We are due for a big story, and I can't wait. I'd love to have a year where you have 4 major stories that you really want to debate to figure out what's number one. But we'll move forward. Tonight we've got some interesting news. Nothing, I don't think anything that's going to set the paranormal world on fire, but there's some stuff that needs to be talked about that's kind of going viral. Of course, people believe a lot of things that they read, especially on social media, without question sometimes. And even if there is a debate, people tend to take sides. And we typically miss information when we do that. But anyway, let's jump into the cryptid segment for tonight. The 8th official sighting of the Loch Ness Monster. Yes, your favorite cryptid creature here on the show. I know, not really. But it's interesting because it's probably one of the more consistent ones out there. I don't know if that's good or bad. I like when things kind of go away for a while and then pop back up. The Loch Ness Monster has been pretty consistent in sightings for the last few years, but we'll kind of talk about that here in a second. So the 8th official sighting back on July 19th. The sighting occurred when a father and his daughter were hiking around the loch near Fort Augustus. And they stated that a tour boat had passed nearby about 20 minutes prior to them spotting the unidentified movement in the loch. So they didn't actually see anything. Nothing came out of the water and splashed or came after them or roared or anything like that. No, they just saw movement in the water. And it's like a giant bathtub, Loch Ness. If you've ever been in a bathtub and you push water to one side, it hits the side and reverberates. It does a lot of weird things, especially with the wind. It's a very long, narrow stretch of water, and reacts very, very strange to wind and weather. And that's why people see a lot of weird stuff. Plus, you can't really see very far. I really one of the things I want to do, if I can ever go there, is just put my hand in the water and just see how far away you can see your hand. I know in Lake Erie it's pretty dark because of the wind and the stuff that's in it. But this Loch Ness is heavy with the peat. It's pretty hard to see in it at all. So you really can't see if there's fish or anything under the surface. You can't see it from the surface. So probably something explainable. But like all the other Loch Ness Monster sightings, it's just ambiguous enough that we don't have the answer. We can't disprove it, but we can't prove it either. And that's why the Loch Ness Monster continues to wow people and continues to be in the news. It's always one of those clickable stories in the United Kingdom. It generates a lot of money for them. And the sighting comes just over a month from the last sighting, back on June 2nd, of a 2-second sighting of a creature. Neither of these sightings includes a photograph, even though, yes, we all carry very sophisticated cameras in our pockets. But it's not always that easy to, we're watching something and trying to figure out what it is, as well as getting photographic evidence. It sounds simple, sounds easy until you're in that situation. I've been in that situation a few times, and I just kind of laugh because I'm just not able to get a photograph of something I'm seeing or observing or unless I can mentally process it quick enough and get through it and know what I'm looking at. So yeah, no physical evidence. Well, at least it's not like the camera photographs that we've been seeing from the webcam. Those are really, really bad, and not looking forward to when it gets colder out there. That's all we're going to be seeing. So yeah, 8 sightings so far through July. And last year, there was a total of 13 official sightings. And by official, I mean sightings recorded on the Loch Ness, the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register website at lochnessightings.com. And that's compiled by Gary Campbell. And you may remember 2019 was a record year with 18 total sightings, which is the record number of sightings for the 21st century. And the most since 1983, where there were 21 sightings of 20 different events. And it's not always been that way. I thought there was a year where there was no sightings, but I didn't see that. But from 2005 until 2013, there were only 21 total sightings. So some years there was only 1, some only 2. And I think the highest in that stretch was like 5. So, we've had years, but I think we're getting a little bit looser on what we call sightings nowadays because, again, it generates interest and generates click-throughs. And I'm sure, people make money off of sightings. Granted, you can't have too many, but you got to have just enough to continue to keep the interest of the Loch Ness Monster. And yeah, it's not one of my favorite cryptids. Probably top 5 because I think it's rather cool how, despite all the evidence against the Loch Ness Monster, it continues to be one of the more popular ones, and people still believe in it. Still, people go out there to look for it, even though science has pretty much discarded that and said, hey, there's pretty much no possible way anything like that's unexplainable lives in the loch. Could be a lot of different explanations that just happen to make somebody feel that they see something. From a deer swimming across the water to a log, to wind, to seesh, which is the water moving back and forth, creating a ripple. Looks like a boat goes through without a boat going through. So people assume that it's a creature underneath. But again, you can't see into the water. So it's like a perfect blend to keep people believing that something is there, even if there's nothing there. And the Loch Ness Monster, even if you were to drain the loch, people will still believe that the creature's there somewhere, somehow. And it's going to live on. It's going to be the longest lasting. You don't hear too much about chupacabra anymore. It's very rare. We used to have sightings all over the place, and it was a story we talked about probably every other week here on the show, but it's all but disappeared. And Bigfoot has become, well, we'll talk about Bigfoot here in a minute. Bigfoot has become nothing more than a viral joke of hoaxed videos, but we'll get into that here in a second. But our second story of the night takes us to Indiana, the Hoosier state. Back on July 6th, way back when, of the Paranormal News Insider, I had a story where a father and son saw a 7-foot-long alligator in a pond in Maryland. It's a little far north for where they're supposed to be, although it is along the ocean. And I don't know. I still think that it's possible that an alligator got washed out to sea and kind of got lost, disoriented, and ended up in that area. It's possible, but probably not. Probably just an exotic pet dumped into the water like so many of these stories end up being. The man eventually trapped and unfortunately had to kill the alligator due to the potential public danger. That's a big boy, 7-footer. That's pretty dangerous. And authorities may have done the same if they would have been able to been on the scene when the alligator was caught on a food trap. Although, again, it was trapped, so maybe they could have done something. But I'm sure in Maryland they're not trained on how to capture and subdue a 7-foot thrashing alligator. That's pretty scary business, to be honest. I've seen my fair share of 7+ footers out in the wild, and I tell you, it's not easy to look eye to eye with those things. It's pretty scary. They are unpredictable. You can't zigzag your way out of outrunning one of those things. If they decide they want you, they're going to get you. They could run pretty fast for a short period of time, and they can do some incredible things. And once they get a hold of you, good luck. Good luck. So yeah, they're a little intimidating as far as I'm concerned. I'd rather come across a mountain lion than an alligator in the wild if I had to choose. Although I've seen plenty of alligators in the wild and never really seen a mountain lion. So maybe I'd change my mind. I don't know. So back on July 25th, a fisherman in a lake about 30 miles northwest of Fort Wayne, Indiana, saw what he thought was an alligator. Pretty sure it was an alligator. Now, Fort Wayne, if you're not familiar with Indiana geography, I should say Fort Wayne is in the northeastern area of the state. And this being 30 miles northwest, so it'd be kind of, not towards Chicago, but in that general direction. Probably right in the middle of the state of Indiana. The man contacted the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, who sent an officer on Sunday to the area, and were not able to find it, of course, because again, they're not trained to find alligators. It's not their thing. On Monday, a second officer was also sent to the scene, but also, again, could not locate the alligator. The man then went back at night. I don't know. It seems like these guys are pretty smart. They can figure these things out, and they figured out. He figured out how to catch it. So I don't know exactly what he did, but strung up some food and was able to capture the alligator. And very similar to the Maryland story, unfortunately, he put it down. Not a popular thing to a lot of people, but unfortunately, that's what happens. A lot of these stories is the alligators are dispatched because, again, these places aren't able to do anything with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. I haven't heard of too many Indiana stories. A lot of Illinois stories. So I mentioned Chicago. A lot of Chicago alligator sightings. They're probably they actually have herpetologists in the area that are set up for that. They see a lot of them. But Indiana, I don't really see a whole lot of stories on alligators. So he used a treble hook and a net. It's got to be a big net. He told WANE TV out of Fort Wayne, the alligator measured just over 5 feet. And the 5-foot mark is kind of where they become dangerous. An alligator, once it hits about 5 feet, is a danger definitely to children and animals. Even a smaller one, about 3 foot, can kill a small dog, small to medium dog. But a 5-footer, pretty much any dog is in danger. And I don't know what it is with dogs and alligators. They seem to want to get really close to them. Some animals are intimidated by dogs, but not alligators. Nope. They like to chew on dogs. But yeah, once you hit 5 foot, that's the mark of. That's when they become a danger and a nuisance if they're out in the wild. The big problem with Indiana is and again, I haven't heard too many stories. I've kind of looked up some stuff. Pretty rare, at least in this part of the state, to see these stories. I've seen a few down south of Indianapolis, more towards the southern border of Indiana. But what makes it weird Probably the bigger problem here is that it's not illegal to own an alligator without a permit as long as it's under 5 feet long. So my guess is the owner realized this or had an awareness of this, and probably goes along with the fact that they couldn't care for it anymore, because once they get kind of that big, you can't put them in the bathtub anymore. They don't really fit in the kid tub or the kid plastic little pools anymore, and they get kind of hard to take care of, hard to wrestle or to keep doing what you want it to do. It starts to get pretty independent once it gets to that size. The owner probably, again, couldn't care for it, and they realized that they had to have documentation. You have to obtain a permit, which means a visitation, meaning you have to display that you can properly care for the animal. So they probably just said, hey, you know what? He'll be good out in this pond. Nobody has been hurt from what I can read about dumped alligators, but these stories are very concerning. There's at least one a month during the warmer months in the northern part of the United States that I've seen. And I'm sure there's a lot that I have not stumbled across or not been able to find or haven't popped up in my news feeds. And I'm sure there's a lot that go unreported or just don't make stories because of other things going on in a lot of these communities that is bigger news, or people don't talk about it. The Department of Natural Resources may come out and just take care of it, and nobody hears about it. Depends on how it's reported. If nobody says anything to the media's never going to know. So I'm sure there's a lot more alligators creeping through the water that may go undiscovered as well before succumbing to the colder temperatures in the fall and the winter. So, alligators are actually pretty fast on land. They can hit sprint speeds above up to 20 miles an hour, and that's a lot of weight coming at you. And they're pretty low, and they can actually climb a tree to a certain extent. So don't try that either. And most trees in swampy areas are not that tall and branch out pretty far. I've seen alligators actually up in trees. It's not normal for them to do, but if they really want to do it, they'll do it. They don't really use a lot of energy to do anything, so you might be lucky. If you do run through a parking lot, you might have an advantage. But the whole zigzag thing, don't bother. They'll match you. And alligators are smart. They'll just go in a straight line, because they really can't do that curvy stuff. So they'll go in a straight line. When you're making all these curves, they'll eventually catch you. And good luck. But the further away from water you get, you're good. You get about 30 feet away from the water, you should be all right, because they're going to stop. They're going to retreat. But again, not something I want to mess with. I'm pretty afraid of those guys. I give them the respect that they deserve for being around as long as they have. But it's just aggravating to continue to read about these stories in states like Indiana that don't want to do anything unless they're 5 feet long. I mean, that's a lot of potential alligators. People go to a hobby store or order them online, which is a big thing nowadays as well. And caimans and the baby crocodiles and all that stuff are also bought online. We've only had one crocodile story in the last few years. It was actually here in Ohio. It was a giant crocodile. I think it was 9 feet long. It was in a creek where kids were swimming. That was a pretty scary one. But they unfortunately had to put that one down as well. So you never know. I mean, you may live in Indiana, Ohio, Missouri, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, anywhere in the Northeast, and you never think you're going to see one of these things. But think again. They're out there. And I look forward to maybe one day seeing one. Hopefully not. I've seen enough in Florida to keep me happy for a while, but that's okay. So let's go to Bigfoot news for the week. We got a couple of stories. One kind of cutesy, and another not so cutesy. I'll just put it to you that way. So not a whole lot of news on the Bigfoot front for 2021. that are really great stories. I don't know how else to put that. Just they're just kind of there. They're just kind of Bigfoot stories. Other than the story out of Oklahoma earlier this year about a bounty. Was it up to $3 million if you can capture a Bigfoot safely? Capture an 8 foot 500 pound creature without anybody getting hurt. Good luck. But another Bigfoot story out of Oklahoma this week involves a Bigfoot peeking into somebody's house. That sounds scary. The scene was in Hochatown, Oklahoma, and kids were gathered for a 6-year-old's birthday party when suddenly the kids began screaming. They saw was a Bigfoot peeking into the house. Now, that sounds scary, but the Bigfoot was wearing a blue bow and a blue tutu, and was also carrying balloons. But the kids didn't care. They were freaking out. This was a viral video. I think it was on TikTok, of course. And the poor kids, I really felt bad. It's funny to the adults, but obviously this is pretty scarring for these kids that are probably going to hate. They're not going to be eating beef jerky for a while. Let's just put it to you that way. They were pretty freaked out by the whole scene. The parents had initially thought it was a great idea to invite a person dressed in a Bigfoot costume to the birthday party for a 6-year-old kid. But thinking back, I think it's probably better than a clown. I mean, clowns are outdated. Clowns are scary. A lot of people are, maybe that's where that comes from. A lot of people are scared of clowns. Maybe it's because of these birthday parties. Now, maybe we've ruined it for kids with Bigfoot now. But the good news is after coming into the house and seeing the adults mingling with Bigfoot, the kids kind of slowly came around and they posed with some pictures with Bigfoot. So it looks like all was good. But they got their viral video of Bigfoot with the kids. And they got them crying and freaking out, which, I don't know if that's good or not. But yeah, they got their 15 minutes. So I'm seeing some stuff. People are still talking in the chat room about the crocodiles and alligators and hippos and stuff. So hippos, interestingly, I didn't know this until a few years ago. So hippos are multiplying in South America and Mexico because they've been brought there by certain people of ill repute. Actually, I think Mexico is where they're really out of control. And there's some talk about whether or not they continue to move northward. So there's a chance, an outside chance, that hippos might make their way to the United States someday. That would not be good. Those are some pretty dangerous creatures. I think water buffalo are the worst. But hippos, yeah, not something you want to mess with in, 3 to 8 feet of water. They're very deadly. Very dangerous. But I know Mexican drug cartels have the use of hippos to protect their property. And they're very effective at that. And as long as you feed them, they'll stick around. But once those cartels are cleared out, those hippos kind of get bored and they start looking around. And, luckily there's a giant desert between us and those parts of Mexico where those hippos are at. But it's pretty scary to think about if we were to have that. We've got a lot of other creatures that are dumped into the swamps of Florida. And even down in, trying to think what nutria, down in Louisiana and Alabama and Texas, those things are really giant rats, and they're really gross. And they pretty much let you kill them. You just shoot them on the roadside. They just multiply like rabbits. Very scary creatures too. So yeah, we're being invaded. All these weird creatures. And hippos, yeah, if they ever get a foothold, that's not good. So Bigfoot Part 2. Keep getting distracted here, but Bigfoot Part 2, the second story, a little bit more of a serious note versus a kid's birthday party. This is one of those stories that kind of irritates me as well. It's been a viral photo. You might have seen this on Facebook. It's a series of a few, I think it's like 3 pictures put together. It's a story circulating that states that Bigfoot photos have been validated by Virginia authorities. Whatever that means, I'm not really sure how you validate a photo. A post circulating on Facebook and other social media sites states that a man had a close encounter with a Bigfoot and took some amazing photos during that encounter. Uh, Basically, just a dark bipedal thing walking through the woods, and it's I've mentioned it before. We've had that Patterson Gimlin film, and that's become the kind of the trademark of Bigfoot sightings. If you're not copying that, then it's not really a Bigfoot sighting. So every video, every photo is like a Bigfoot kind of creature walking sideways at a distance. It just gets so tiresome. I mean, we all have zooms on cameras and things, but we never just seem to use them. It's funny, the only technology that ever makes it out in the woods is just horrible, blurry potato cameras. So yeah, it's this post is circulating on Facebook, mostly Facebook, because let's face it, people are really gullible on Facebook versus other social media outlets. And again, purportedly validated by the Henry County Sheriff's Department. And it also says the Finding Bigfoot team was deployed. I didn't know they were like on call. So yeah, I guess when you see a Bigfoot, you take a picture. The Sheriff's County validates it. You can just send in the crew, and they'll go and find it for you, I suppose. Where's this guy at? Oh, there it is. Throw that in the chat room. So I got a picture of that screen cap, I guess, of the post. So here it is. Somebody sharing that. Those 3 pictures, pretty ambiguous. Just a dark creature, but there's a backstory. Of course, there's a backstory. Captain Scott Barker, who's actually with the Henry County, Virginia Sheriff's Office, confirmed to Lead Stories that Lead Stories is kind of a fact-checking website that digs into these things using a lot of valuable resources to confirm or deny these stories. So Scott Barker confirmed that the department had not been given or verified the images, nor have they had actual reports of Bigfoot in the county that were directed to them personally. And a little bit of research, it's not hard, takes you to the fact that these photos have been posted to social media as far back as 2013. And they've been used at least once since that I've seen. I recognized them right away when I saw the share on one of the many Bigfoot sites that I follow. That person was pretty much blasted out of the water after 10 or 15 people saying, "Oh wow, great pictures. Those are the best pictures of Bigfoot ever. I've never seen anything so great." And then 12 comments down is like the veteran people just totally blasting them for stop posting hoaxes and blah blah blah, and here's the facts and information. And like, okay, guys, beat me to the punch. So originally, back in 2013, this was purportedly out of Kimberling City, Missouri, and the person that posted them pretty much disappeared without answering any questions about them. It was pretty torn apart at the time. The photos were a little bit better quality back then. It looks like they've really been cropped and blurred, and they look older now than what they were when it first came out. You could see better quality images, and I think they were dummied down on purpose because it didn't take too long. Anybody with any basic software could blow the picture up and look at it and see that it was just somebody in a gorilla costume. So it really wasn't a very deep mystery to see what was going on there. But it was just something to get attention. It was a viral thing, and unfortunately, anytime anything like that works, I think people actually just spend time going through old posts on a lot of these websites, and they just pull these out of the dumpster and just kind of brush them off, and just try to use them again to get attention or whatever, to fool people, I guess. And, that's the sad thing. That's what frustrates me about the Bigfoot aspect of cryptozoology. To me, I think, Loch Ness Monster is pretty tied into basic cryptozoology. But when you start talking about Bigfoot, there's so many different aspects about it. These are flesh and blood creatures, or these are aliens, or these are interdimensional creatures, and there's on every continent, and there's all these debates about different things. It's almost like it's its own separate aspect of cryptozoology to me, and I really think it should be. It shouldn't be cryptozoology that studies. I think there should be a separate segment, and I think it should be called Bigfootery, and it should just be its own thing. Just kind of go away, because it's really taken a life of its own, and people are just the only things you really get out of it anymore are people hoaxing photographs and videos. It's unfortunately that's the culture of it. Hey, can you take an old sweatshirt, an old hoodie, and go out in the woods, and I'll film you, and we'll see if we can fool some people. It's pretty much what it's become, and it's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. As far as Bigfoot websites to follow, probably the best website would be bfro.net. The Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. It was actually probably the last 2 days I've been reading some reports. There's been some reports here in Ohio, other reports. So it's kind of like if, let's say, the MUFON website were to be updated a little bit better. It'd be kind of like that, but you get up-to-the-date sightings, and it's categorized by area, and so you can actually follow along with these sightings, but they're actually researched by local researchers. So I guess it is kind of like MUFON, but the unfortunate thing is you're just looking at, people that see things or report things. So, take it with a grain of salt, but it's far better than most of the, let's say, Facebook Bigfoot pages that I follow. That just seem to be filled with more misinformation and hoaxes and wishful thinking than maybe there's a lot of misidentification of the BFR reports, but at least there's a little bit of vetting going on there versus people who are just trying to get the most page likes and post likes. It's just a game. So off to UFO news we go. Let's pack our bags, and we're going to head out from, where were we just at? Virginia? Yeah, we're in Virginia. So now we're going to go to Turkey. Not that Turkey, but the country of Turkey. So there was a little bit of panic in Turkey. Sometimes this happens. There was a bright flash in the sky that was seen probably not so much by people, but on cameras around 2 a.m. on July 31st. And the events happened in the skies over the city of Izmir along the Aegean Sea. Now, video of the bright flash and eerie green glow created a lot of speculation. Of course, like I said, as a lot of these stories do, people will claim that it's UFOs or it's other things, satellites crashing or whatever. The speculation runs rampant, and people create panic because they don't understand what they're looking at. And apparently people could hear the object enter the atmosphere, which is pretty rare to hear a sonic boom associated with, because most meteors are pretty small, and you're really not going to get anything I don't think this one was that big, but people do claim that they heard it. I don't know if that's true. But one person on Twitter added explosion sounds to one of the popular short videos that was captured on a closed circuit camera. So kind of to fool people a little bit, I think. That person quoted said a green hashtag meteor was seen over hashtag Izmir, hashtag Turkey. This is not a meteor, just a tiny demo missile bomb shot from satellite. Notice the fire as meteor enters Earth's atmosphere. Unquote. So it's kind of weird. There's kind of a weird sandwich of saying meteor, then saying not meteor, then saying meteor. It's weird. So yeah, it was a meteor, and meteors do, when they hit the atmosphere, the friction does create basically a tiny explosion. I mean, it's scrubbing off speed. It's hitting air. It's hitting the atmosphere, and it's basically just exploding. So yeah, of course, it looks like a fire because it is a fire pretty much. And you'll get the green glow or other colors because of the mineral content. It burns differently in the atmosphere. And green is a pretty normal color to see. And that pretty much tells you what you're seeing as a meteor from the metallic content. So just a meteor. I don't know what the speculation was. People trying to create more drama than what was already happening. It's a pretty scary thing. If you've ever seen a bright one, I've been fortunate to see a few bright green ones that last more than more than that instant, that like millisecond that most meteorites, you see it, it's just a flash and it's gone. I've seen some that lasted pretty much almost up to 10 seconds long, that you see the stream falling. And it's kind of scary if you don't know what you're looking at. Actually, Indiana, I was in out in the middle of nowhere in Indiana as a passenger, and I watched one, and it was pretty cool to see that. So yeah, bright flash in the sky. It was a meteor. That's all. That's it. I know it sounds boring. And this happens a lot. There was a few meteor sightings recently here in the United States, but they were, not too many people jumped to conclusions. It was pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dry what they were. Yeah, so despite a lot of speculation of a UFO or satellite crash, it turned out to be a little more mundane. And it was just your run-of-the-mill ordinary meteor. And while it was very bright, it's considered, it could be possibly part of the Perseid meteor shower, which is pretty rare to see. They don't really produce a lot of large meteor sightings with the Perseids, but it's possible. The Perseid meteor shower, kind of right in the middle of that, well, toward the end of it, I guess, takes place in late July, early August. So, yeah, I guess we're probably past the peak at this point. And it was probably right around that point when it's probably at the peak when that happened. So yeah, it's possible that's what they saw. But the video is pretty startling. It's pretty bright flash, and I don't know. They just people think it's a UFO crashing because you build this technology of a intelligent civilization, creates a craft that can fly through space, dodging random rocks floating through space and gravities and different things, but it hits a little atmosphere of a medium-sized planet. It can't handle it. It just blows up. It's kind of funny. But yeah, we get a lot of those stories. So speaking of UFOs, we've talked about the dust is kind of settling here on the UAP report. It's kind of cooled off. That story's kind of it's kind of there. We're kind of waiting for the next big thing to come out about this, or another released video. There's claims of other videos of some of these sightings. So, we'll wait. It's going to leak, eventually, because I don't think the government knows what they're doing with that stuff. I think they trust the general public really to come up with conclusions better than what they can. So, a lot of experts in various fields have been given their opinions about the lackluster evidence obtained during the UAP reports. And the questions have lingered. What do we do? What do we do the next time it happens? How do we separate these UAP reports, these 143 unexplained reports, from the next one that hits? Are we just going to sit around and hopefully catch the next weird thing on video and leak it out to the public so there could be some public debate, create concern? Again, I think it's all about money. I think they want funding for something, probably to fund our own projects, or maybe that we have this technology, and maybe it'd be a little controversial to have basically spy craft that are beyond our typical drones that we have, and we're just kind of covering up the fact that we've developed this stuff, and we're going to say, hey, this is technology we're going to deploy on them, so it'll make it softer for the general public to chew on or to swallow, the blue pill. Avi Loeb of Harvard University is a cosmologist and astrophysicist who's gained pretty much national attention when he suggested that the interstellar object Oumuamua, I never say that right, Oumuamua, should be listened to with a radio telescope. Pretty much thought this was the craziest thing I'd ever hear from an actual scientist, a pretty respected scientist in various fields, was suggesting that Oumuamua was a alien object. And, obviously a lot of people were standing up and clapping from the UFO field and thought that was wonderful. I just thought it was weird. But that was kind of the beginning of when scientists, mainstream scientists, started to take this stuff seriously. And he thought that should be listened to with radio telescopes such as the Green Bank Telescope located in West Virginia. He suggested the strange, elongated, cigar-like object might actually be a solar sail of an extraterrestrial technological civilization. So a solar sail pulling along another craft, or just an object that is a solar sail flying through space, flew through our solar system, the first interstellar object that we've observed, or at least known that was an interstellar object. He went on to publish a book called Extraterrestrial, the First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth. This came out earlier this year, I think late January, on the Oumuamua object. He's also a member of the rather exclusive President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology that reports to the President of the United States. I don't know what's going on with that now. I know President Trump brought that back, but I haven't heard anything lately about that. But it's it's less than 20 people that are involved in that at any point in time. So that's a pretty exclusive club to be a part of. With these unidentified aerial phenomena reports, he states, we're getting unreliable witness information along with technology that is just as unreliable at identifying things beyond what they're capable of doing. So when you're relying on witness reports, it's one thing to be in a courtroom where the witness statement can put away a murderer for life or set them free. Unfortunately, when you're talking about science, we don't take the witness testimony as the main piece. We rely on observation and repeatability to dictate what we're seeing and what we're identifying. We don't have that in the UFO field. We don't have that really in any of the paranormal fields. Some of us have tried to do that with various aspects. So then you add the technology piece to it, which is it's kind of rough because a lot of people think, well, hey, here's these things, these infrared cameras are capturing these objects, they're doing things they shouldn't do. They're unidentified aerial phenomena or UFOs. They're unidentified flying objects, cut and dry, right? Well, again, the first few times that these things were delivered to the general public, it kind of came out that the operators of said equipment were new to that equipment. They didn't understand the equipment, and the infrared equipment was seeing things that it wasn't really technically designed to track, and it can't differentiate a bird from a missile, and you can't really judge speed when you're swinging a camera around and the plane is moving and have all these things going on at the same time. It's just a tool in the tool bag. It's not a scientific instrument. It's just something that helps us see things that are pretty difficult to see with the human eye. So there's a lot of issues with UAP reports, and it's not going to get any better moving forward unless we do something different. But what can we do? So Loeb has suggested a three-pronged approach to help get to the bottom of the UAP situation. So I read about this and was on he writes for Scientific American quite a bit, but this also was on the Harvard website as well. So it's a pretty big thing here that he's trying to come up with. So the three-pronged approach kind of suggests that, we just can't sit around and wait. We can't just hope that something's going to come on video again, and maybe we'll be able to capture something, or we'll be able to shoot this down, or whatever the case is. There's got to be a better way of collecting data from various aspects. And, also it's been suggested, it's pretty obvious, I would think, that there are many different explanations at hand with these reports. So it's not just, wow, that was a balloon, so we check one off. Maybe there's a few other balloons, but what about the other ones? They've got to be aliens, right? Well, no, there's some of these are more than likely jet aircraft at a distance or at a certain angle. Some of these could be reflections, faulty systems. All sorts of explanations exist for the potential of some of these observations. So how do we prevent misidentification? How do we identify? Let's not prevent. Let's just get out there and find this stuff. How do we do that? So the first of what Loeb calls the Galileo Project, which is the fancy schmancy name for this three-pronged approach of discovering what UAPs are, or if there are any at all. Really, from the way I'm reading this, centers on the first part, centers on the use of a multi-detector of capturing images of UAPs. So this is pretty much at ground level, looking for in our atmosphere UAPs. So the goal would be to create a network of high-resolution telescopes and detectors, a various array of detectors to help capture detailed images of these objects. So the use of multi-wavelength detector arrays would include technology like radar and infrared technologies, and among other things, to kind of pair it all together to be able to identify strange things or things that aren't known objects that we can, once we detect it, we can photograph it with these high-resolution telescopes, so we can see if there is a little flag on the object or made in such and such country, little label on there, but also be able to maybe figure out what some of these things are. And if we figure out that there's certain things going on, then maybe we fix those certain things so that it becomes less and less of a surprise, and we can narrow things down. Or maybe we just strike gold with one of these things, and we do discover a real life UAP that's alien controlled. We have to kind of think that using the multi-wavelength detector. We kind of have to think that way because you'd have to think that an extraterrestrial technological civilization probably mastered technologies of stealth and detection, and radar would be something very elementary to it. And they probably want to keep their stuff maybe undetectable. Maybe it's undetectable just by design, not on purpose. Maybe that's just how it is because, it's zipping around in a strange atmosphere, an alien atmosphere that they barely know anything about. So maybe that's just how it is. The second piece to keep an eye out away from Earth and conduct an in-depth research on Oumuamua-like interstellar objects. So the other thing, obviously, in our atmosphere, but also what's out there in space. So by tracking these objects, we could be able to detect potential objects long before they get to Earth and be able to study them before they're able to blend into the Earth's atmosphere. So I think it's a smart approach. I mean, hey, if they're here, how did they get here? So if we can intercept them before they get here and kind of disappear into the woodwork, maybe disguise themselves as weather balloons, maybe we can see them. The third prong approach is to search for potential satellites that could be as small as 1 meter or less exploring Earth. Again, a variation of technology would be deployed to be able to detect intelligent craft in the atmosphere above. So we're looking at out there, around us, and within us, basically. Three-prong approach. It's pretty thorough. It sounds like a good idea at discovering repeatable and ongoing studies of potential anomalous objects, is at least to get rid of some potential, misidentification of some of these things that I think is really going on a lot more than what they're admitting. And it's much better than collecting a little bit of evidence and a statement and debating it later on. And we'll keep an eye on the Galileo project to see if it gains any steam at Harvard or within the government sector within the next few months. Maybe all this stuff, this report was funding for something like this. I don't know. Maybe here it is. And we'll see if it gets deployed in the next few months. So that being said, we got one last story, and it's in the ghost arena. And it's not really the type of story that I love to talk about. It's unfortunately one that we talk about a lot that kind of wish we wouldn't have to, but officers and emergency crews were summoned to the Central Terminal train station in Buffalo, New York, just after 10:30 p.m. on Saturday, July 31st. A 35-year-old woman was treated for injuries sustained in a fall of about 20 feet. And the biggest problem, obviously, with the injury is that the Central Terminal was closed to the public back in 1979. The terminal was built in 1929 and was one of the busiest train stations for about 50 years before shutting down. The pair claimed to have been ghost hunting just prior to the woman's fall. The building has been featured on Ghost Hunters in the past, the TV show Ghost Hunters, during I don't remember that, but apparently it was on a 6-hour live event. I didn't verify that, but I'm sure it's true. It's a pretty big building. If you look at it on Google Earth, it's huge. And I guess it's attracted a lot of trespassers in the past. I've dug up probably at least a dozen stories of people being chased out of that building or being caught, or people doing viral stuff on YouTube and different places that were inside of that building without permission. And it's probably going to be continuing to do so. It's probably one of the most unique attractions to ghost hunters in the Buffalo area. I mean, there's a lot of stuff around there. Across the, you go across the river there, and it's Canada. There's a lot of stuff on the other side there, but pretty unique. Never been in a train station to ghost hunt before, or ghost investigate, but Sounds pretty cool. Authorities state the pair were in the area without permission, but charges have yet to be filed. I don't know what they're waiting for. That's only going to tell people it's okay to trespass and go on in there. Apparently, it's. I didn't see any signs on Google Earth, but sometimes it's hard to see stuff because everything's blurred out. But it doesn't look like it's that difficult to get there. It looks like people were driving right up to the building. I mean, if the Google camera truck can just drive right up to it, then I'm sure anybody else can as well. So maybe they need to do a better job of keeping people away from it, the giant parking lot there. And we'll see. Maybe the woman will seek legal action against the city. Hey, maybe you should have had that boarded up so I couldn't get in there, or whoever owns the building. But yeah, we'll probably see a lot more of these as we get toward Halloween. People wanting to get out, people wanting to explore a little bit more who have been shut in a lot over the last year and a half. But don't do it. It's not worth it. I can't imagine. Well, I mean, I'm a little older than 35, but 35 years old, falling 20 feet, that's probably not going to feel too good. And you don't know what you're going to land on. And you're not sure if you're going to be able to get help. That's probably not the best area to get hurt either, looking at the neighborhood. So, yeah, be careful out there. Get permission. And if you can't get permission, somebody else has already done it. Watch it on YouTube. I mean, everybody's got a flashlight. So obviously they weren't, I mean, they were ghost hunting. They weren't doing an investigation. They were just they probably just trespassed and wanted to see it because they saw it on TV. So they probably didn't have any equipment. Probably were just in the area and just probably said, hey, there's that place. Let's go there. Didn't have any equipment at all. Probably not even a flashlight. These places can be dangerous. And I've been into a lot of old buildings in the last 20 plus years. And yeah, people just take chances that they shouldn't. They walk places that they shouldn't. And I've seen some potentially very dangerous places. And if you can't go in there, don't go in there. It's not worth it. You don't know what could fall. You don't know where you could fall. And they're lucky to get out, pretty much. Well, we'll see. But with that, I bid you adieu for the week. And I will see you next week. But for now, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck. And always keep your mind slightly ajar. Above all else, don't stop believing. And thanks for tuning in tonight. I do appreciate it. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.